So ever since I started my PC building journey back in the early 2000s, I've always wanted to do an all-white PC build, whether that was for someone else or just one single build for myself. And over the last couple of months, I've finally been able to do it. This is my all-white PC build that is powered by Intel and Gigabyte. So let's take a look at it. So this is my Intel-powered all-white gaming PC build, and this one has been a long time coming. Inside we have the Gigabyte Aorus B760i motherboard with the i7-14700K, which is an absolute beast. And before that I actually had the 13700KF on the same board, which is actually great because it allowed me to make the upgrade to the 14th gen Intel chipset without actually having to change the motherboard itself. Now, I did do an entire video on the 14700K and if you should actually go out and make the upgrade from the 13th gen to the 14th gen. So if you want more information on the chipset itself, be sure to check out that video down in the description below. Now, to keep the 14700K cool, I'm using the Gigabyte Aorus WaterForce 2 360 Ice, which is the white version, of course. And the fans on these are actually really great. It's those interlocking fans, which are an absolute lifesaver when it comes to the amount of cables that you have in your build. Plus, if you're running one of these newer 14th gen chipsets, you're definitely going to want to use at least a 240mm radiator or a beefy air cooler. I just prefer the AIO coolers as they look a little bit more clean and not as bulky as the air coolers do. And overall, I just like the look of the AIOs better. For the GPU, I'm currently running the RTX 4080 Super Aero, which is a great match for the i7. And for most games, this is a killer combo, but something like the RTX 4060 Ti Aero also works really well. Plus, it is still a great card for the general gamer. Plus, it comes in at a more reasonable price. So if you wanted to do a build like this, I would definitely say save a little bit of money on the GPU and rather spend it on the CPU side and then just upgrade your GPU a year or two down the line. Now, in terms of RAM and PSU, there are a bunch of different SKUs that you can choose from, but I highly recommend getting at least 32 gigabytes of RAM in the highest speed that number one fits your budget, and then number two actually fits the maximum speed of your motherboard. Do check that out before you actually spend, for example, on 4000 megahertz when your motherboard actually just supports 2000. So do check that out. Now in my setup, I have 32 gigabytes of 4000 megahertz RAM, and then I also have an 850 watt power supply, which for me is sort of the minimum to actually future-proof your setup. So if you want to get something that sort of will last you a few years down the line, I would suggest getting at least 850 watt power supply, or then maybe even 1000 or more. But also be sure to check out what the graphics card recommends that you actually want to buy or that you want to upgrade to. So let's say you want to upgrade to a 4080 Super, just make sure that you actually check out what the minimum requirements are for that card before you actually go out and buy a power supply. And then lastly, the part that I always forget to mention is the case that I'm using. And the case that I'm using is the FSP CMT380W, which is the white one, but then they also have the black variant. So if you do want to build a black PC, then you can also get the case in black. Now, overall for me, this is just a really clean case. There's no major branding on it. There's a lot of space for cable management and a big glass side panel to, of course, see all the beautiful components that you will be placing on the inside. Now, as mentioned in a bunch of previous videos before, a PC is more than just a gaming setup for me, and that is actually what's great about the i7-14700K, is that it is great for more than just gaming as well. It is a great CPU to create content with, whether that is live streaming or just video editing. Plus, it is really great for 3D applications as well, so if you want to use it for something like Maya, Blender, or even just CAD modeling, then this CPU is going to be great for all of that as well. Now, I've been using this current setup with a bunch of different GPUs over the last couple of months to edit videos with, to create content with, whether that is general graphic designing or just Instagram posts, whatever the case may be. And I've also used it for gaming, and in all of those tasks, this setup has been amazing. I also recently got a 3D printer, so I've been spending a lot of time in Inventor actually creating different 3D files and editing different 3D files that I want to print. And while doing that, this PC has always been able to breeze through all of that. So if you're looking for something that you can make 3D models with, whether that is for Blender models that you want to render in a video, or if that's something that you just want to use for 3D printing, this is really a great setup for all of that. And then when it comes to gaming, depending on your GPU, of course, This setup is enough to play most games in 4K without breaking a sweat. Now, while using it with the RTX 4070 Ti Super, I was able to play almost any game in 4K at high settings while still getting decent frame rates. And now with the RTX 4080 Super, I can do the same. And then when I'm using a GPU like the RTX 4060 Ti, I usually dial that back to 1080p or 2K range, mainly because of the VRAM of the GPU that limits me in most titles. And then of course you just tend to get questionable results when you actually use it in 4K and 2K with most newer titles. So I just tend to keep it at the 1080p, or then sometimes I boost it up to 2K if it can allow that. Now for me, I love playing games like Counter-Strike, Apex Legends, and Helldivers 2, but then also every now and then I do love playing single player games, and those are usually a little bit more graphically intense. But having a setup like this with a decent GPU and the CPU, you really make PC gaming fun, as you don't have to actually worry about playing games or worry about whether or not a game is going to be able to run on the system, or if you're going to have to go into your settings and actually turn down everything, as this setup just handles everything that you throw at it. So if you are looking at making an upgrade from your current setup or just completely building a new setup, then I can highly suggest the i7-14700K if you're going to be using it for multitasking purposes. But if you're just wanting to actually build a gaming PC and you're sort of playing in 1080p, 2K, and then maybe every now and then in 4K, then I can also suggest the i5-14600K, as that is still a really great CPU for general gaming. But do bear in mind that I would rather spend my money on the CPU and then upgrade the GPU later, as it's usually easier to go that way around. So if you're building, sort of prioritize your budget on that end. But what do you think of this build? Do you actually like it? Let me know down in the comment section below. And then, as always, until next time, cheers.